Hello friends, I'm Jonathan Carmichael. I'm a Quaker from Watford Meeting in Hertfordshire in the east of England, and I'm Britain Neely Meeting's Simpler Meetings project manager. As we come to the end of the Simpler Meetings series, we're going to spend some time thinking about ways of moving forwards together. We've been focusing on the essentials of being Quaker worshipping communities, simplifying things by not giving too much weight to some of the additions and fixed ways. Some of you may be thinking of a few smallish changes, perhaps adjustment to roles, that can make meetings simpler to run. Others may be thinking of more transformational changes, like working with other area meetings or with neighbouring meetings that are local to you, or changes to buildings or structures, or using technology to come together. Things that can bring wider benefits. These are all about doing things a little differently, laying down some things that can get in the way to make more space for the Spirit. I'm going to talk first about using some Quaker processes, a bit more about some obstacles that you might meet along the way, and then some practicalities that can help. So some Quaker processes. Quaker values and ways recognize that we have different experiences of the light. We are valuing different perspectives. And listening is really important, listening to one another and listening for the Spirit. And trusting. When we're seeking ways of hearing the light and being open to it, we should think about what will help with that. We can take our time. That lovely phrase, don't just do something, sit there. Doing things also helps. Have spaces to reflect and share, imagine and create. We want to be Spirit-led, and we can be led by the Spirit to act and to change. Spending time exploring together is important. You could use some of these ways. Many meetings now have a meeting for learning, time dedicated to learning together so that more people are on the same page or have heard the same ideas. You could spend time on listening by worship sharing on a theme. Or you could use some creative listening techniques like art or responses to pictures or words or questions. You could have informal discussions. Many meetings have a sort of program of doing that. An important place will be to have discernment in our meetings for worship for business. And it won't be any surprise to you that this may need to come several times to find the right way forward. So don't be expecting that everything will fall into place in a single meeting for worship for business. And before you get to that stage, it may be really useful to do a few of these things. Some meetings find it very helpful to have a spiritual review, which I've heard described as thinking through together how we fulfill our purpose as a Quaker meeting. In a way, it's a bit of taking one step back before trying to take some steps forwards. There's a really useful booklet about this in the Eldership and Oversight Handbook series. You can find on the Eldership and Pastoral Care page of the Britain Neely Meeting website. It contains some helpful advice about questions that you might consider in that spiritual review, such as what is the ministry of our meeting? What is our purpose? And that also talks about how you can go about choosing good questions. That advice is also useful if you're going to have a threshing meeting. These are not about trying to reach a decision or to discern the way forward. It's more about preparation. It's about a space to allow information to be shared, for views to be expressed which may be conflicting, and for some feelings to come through. So having some careful preparation for those meetings are really important, finding the right questions, and using good Quaker discipline in a threshing meeting with gentleness and with love. There's a helpful leaflet about threshing meetings, again on the Britton Yearly Meeting website on the Eldership and Pastoral Care page. And alternatively, you might find that raising something as a concern is a way forward. That's a fairly classical way of Quakers raising things and testing and seeking support from their meeting. In all of these processes, the role of eldership is important. It's useful to make it visible so that people know who is holding the eldership responsibility to help the meeting. It can be supportive, and it's really helpful not to rely upon the clerk to hold the discipline of the meeting. That's a really important function for elders. There's some other aspects. It can help to break a change process into stages. Don't have to do it all at once. So now we are exploring, we're doing a phase of listening, we are doing some refining of options and thinking, perhaps we're listening again, that kind of breaking it into stages. And if you're doing that, it can be important to clarify what the process is so that everybody knows where we are. It's also, I think, helpful to clarify the purpose, be clear so that everyone's clear, why are we doing this? Why are we considering these potential ways forwards? So communicating about that it's happening and why, sharing documents with people and helping them know the routes in which they can get involved. Now a little bit about how you might open discussions about change. I found in the last, I suppose, 3 years of this project work that it can really be helpful to be exploring ideas rather than proposing a particular fixed solution. Because people hearing that can overly focus on one particular proposal and initial thoughts about it. Also, the more you keep yourself open, the more you may discover better ideas. It can really help to get agreement that we're going to do some exploring, or that a group will be established to do some exploring on our behalf. And to communicate that that's happening, so that we don't have people who are surprised that where did this come from? We didn't know about this, I wasn't involved, I didn't get the chance, those kinds of things. So I think it's important to avoid an early proposal that's very fixed. Ask people for their ideas and views. You can encourage people to read and watch and hear the same materials, or indeed find different ones. You could use these Simpler Meetings videos or the transcripts of the talks as part of that process. And you'll find them on the Britton Yearly Meeting website at www.quaker.org.uk/simpler. You may also find that hearing stories of how things have worked in other meetings can be helpful. So finding out what other meetings do or are considering can be very constructive. You might want to visit another meeting together or do the exploring together with other meetings. That can be a useful way of allowing people to hear that others are thinking on the same lines, or to hear what other people are thinking. It moves it away from the entirely local and specific. Now, who else to involve? Obviously, you're going to want to involve people in your meeting. But as someone put it in one of our discussions, think about who your current ways may be excluding and who is it including. Who needs to be involved in the decision? Just those who are currently included? Consult those who are excluded and include them in the decisions. Think also about who needs to be included because they have a role, or because they will have things to say later on. We've all come across that. Who would it be good to include from other meetings, perhaps nearby, or your area, or perhaps meetings far away? You can use networks of role holders that are already in place. The area meeting clerks, the treasurers and trustees all have email groups that you can ask questions on. Similarly, there's one for property and wardenship. Elders and pastoral care friends will have networks of their own. You can explore as an area meeting or several area meetings together. And it can be helpful to have a small group to do some advanced thinking, chewing it over, working out how best to communicate things, looking at a possible sifting of options. And when you're thinking about these kinds of things, it can be helpful to involve local development workers if you have one already for your area. They can be especially helpful with Quaker practices. If you don't have a local development worker, you can ask for help by emailing supportmeetings@quaker.org.uk. You may find that there's a Woodbrook course, or you could ask for a Woodbrook Where You Are session, something tailored to your particular context. That might help take the discussion forwards. And you could find another friend from outside to clerk a particular meeting or a group or a process, facilitating the kind of Quaker processes I was covering earlier. That can be really helpful. These are all ways of involving other people so that we can follow a pathway together. It's not about being an individual on a mission. Now, if you're watching this video in a group, you might want to have a pause here and share some reflections before I talk about obstacles and some practical approaches. Now, let's think about some obstacles on the path. Well, one is simply an absence of ideas or possibilities or permission. You could use the ideas and videos from this series, or perhaps by sharing the videos or sending out the transcripts or watching them together, and talking with other Quakers locally and across Britain can be other sources of good ideas. Another obstacle can be the belief that Quakerism has not been changing. The Society of Friends has changed many times in its 360 plus years. Many of our ways of doing things are not the same as they were 100 years ago or 50 years ago. It's in our tradition to gradually adjust some aspects while staying true to our core. There's another potential obstacle, the pillar of the meeting who resists all change. If you're faced with that kind of situation, it can help to think about our approach to equality and that light will come from many places. Somebody put it in one of our Simpler Meeting sessions. We all need to uphold the process of discernment, which is where we are all heard equally and we do not listen more intently to one person over the other. It may be helpful to remind friends of that. Things can also get stuck when people use phrases like, "That's not Quakerly," or "That's not in right ordering." If you find this happening, it can really help to ask, can you tell me why? Can you tell me why you think that? Can you show me where it's specified that it's not in right ordering? And it can really help to find out, is the thing that's troubling the person something about the process, or do they not like the suggestion itself? Untangling the process and the suggestion can help you to move forward and address whichever one of those it is. Another obstacle can be fear of losing something that is precious to us, and that's wholly understandable. Is this about familiarity? Does it suit me? Well, what about other people? You could ask, what's the worst thing that could happen if we do this? Or what are you most worried about? And then you address those. It brings them out into the open. It doesn't it avoids somebody having to hold on to this trouble that they have. More positively, you could ask, what is it most important that we keep? Or what is the underlying thing that we want to keep rather than the specifics? This question can bring us together and help us see what we want, that we want the same things, even if by slightly different means. And you could see if people really have the views that you think. Someone in one of these sessions said, I started thinking about the meeting house, and I rang and I spoke to the people who I thought would be absolutely unhappy about talking about the meeting house, and I was surprised at their responses. So the situation may not be what you imagine. And someone else reminded us, think it possible that you or the other person might be mistaken. Another one said, go away and think about it again. And there's a very good one, have some food available. Now, some more practical, I suppose you might say, tips and encouragements. Well, it does seem to me that sometimes a classic Quaker approach to change appears to be wait until they die. And here's another one. We're going to wait until there are so few of us that change is forced upon us outside our control. I don't suggest you use those two. You can gather and involve people. It's a collective exploration, not an individual mission. And think about who are the influencers. Develop a vision of how it could be. Get people thinking positively and imaginatively. As someone contributed about when we were talking about meeting without a meeting house, focus on what you will gain rather than what you might lose. That can help take people forwards. Also, be clear why doing this differently is needed. Does everyone see it this way? You might want to be clear about the negatives, the push factors, what's not working, what's causing the problem, what lies behind that, and the positives, the pulls towards this way. What could improve? What's the purpose of this change? What is the ministry of our meeting or our buildings, and how can this help us, etc. So developing common ideas about the pushes and pulls can really help you to reach unity. And when you hit a problem, look for the assumptions that people are making and examine those. Just a couple of examples, like we're not supposed to be changing. It can be an assumption. Or the way people can know that we Quakers exist is by seeing our buildings. If you understand people's assumptions, then the communication can flow on from there. Overall, stay open and explore. And you might want to explore a number of options. It's good to have several options rather than perhaps just one. You may then want to narrow down the options, but if you do that, address why you're not pursuing some of the other options so that people understand and you don't have to keep going back to them. Be open to exploring more options. Sometimes that's just what you needed to find. And be clear, is the status quo viable? Or is it actually not an option and we do need to find some others? And some thoughts about finding agreement. It can help to prioritize. What is most important here that we decide upon? Compromise is a wonderful thing to be able to move forwards. Look for win-wins, things which meet the needs and the desires of more than one perspective, and offer extra help to overcome a particular barrier that can then allow you to move forward more generally. And you don't need to do a sort of all-in-one-go approach or forever. You can pilot things. You can try something for a fixed time and then review and learn and make a new decision. Or you can try an existing way alongside a new way in parallel. So you're not asking people to stop their existing way, you're just asking to try this other one. Or you might do it a bit at a time. Let's try this for these roles first, and then review. Sometimes it may be better to go, rather than have a big discussion, lots of long processes, why don't we just try this for a couple of times and see, and then we'll learn. A bit of experimentation. But we're not trying to, that doesn't mean we're going to necessarily do that forever. And also take opportunities when they arise by accident and learn from them. We are discovering so much during the pandemic. Or you could just wait until they die. So in summary, be aware of the many possibilities that we have and the permission to do things a little differently and the learning we've had from the pandemic. Focus on the potential for new ways and new light. Use good Quaker processes well. Communicate, involve, stay flexible, and experiment. Keep listening for the promptings of the Spirit. Remember, when searching for simpler meetings, we are seeking ways to make space for the Spirit. Thank you, friends.